Oh, here we are. Today we can have quite a gentle approach. It fits the topic, and we also should be kind to ourselves. Although there are many things that we can study in Dharma, we have to be careful that it doesn't become too dense and serious. Samsara is like a vast theater within which many soap operas are occurring. And when we're born in a family, we find ourselves woven into a drama. Then we have the drama of school. And then, of course, you have the drama of Dharma centers, in which you have friends and enemies and happy times and sad times. And these variations of mood and feeling give rise to small subgroups, which is not so helpful. Or if we can start to see our life as a drama, it helps. In the theater, the actors arrive, they come on the bus or they walk and come into the theater, and gradually they change their costume, put on makeup, and so on. They're easing themselves into the role that they're going to play. We want them to be committed to that role, because when they're on stage, they're convincing for us. We can believe in them. Similarly, for us, when we were small babies, we were in the dressing room of our life, the changing room of our life. We were gradually being inducted into the role identity that we would take on in this life. And roles are very interesting because they face in two directions. When I'm in role, I'm confirming to myself that I have an identity, that I can rest inside this way of being, that it is indeed my life, how I am. But I also have to be aware that my presence is performative, that how I am is an offering to other people who will interpret it according to their own role identities. Just as in the theater, where each performance is unique, although the actors and the script is the same, but each evening they are interpreting the text in a different way according to their mood, their fellow members in the cast mood, and the audience mood. So day by day, moment by moment, we are giving a new interpretation of our identity, both for ourselves and for other people. When we have this sense of our existence, we see that we are activity. As we disclose ourselves to other people, we simultaneously disclose ourselves to ourselves. We find out how we are by how we show ourselves. We reveal ourselves to ourselves through revealing ourselves to others. This is a way of approaching the sense of the co-emergence of self and other. When we look to find our individual self, our absolute separation, we don't find it, because how we are is impermanent. It changes according to circumstances. And so, although we might want to have a fixed notion of who we are, the actuality that we find is that we alter with circumstances. Sometimes this seems to be serial, as in terms of cause and effect. If you say something sweet to me, then I feel happy. Your words cause this feeling to arise in me. Sometimes we see more directly that the field of what we take to be the outer object and the field of our embodiment are emerging together. If you're walking in the hills and the surface is scree, small bits of stone which can slide, then as you move, the hill is moving. Then we're more directly aware of the interactive nature of our participation. That connectivity requires us to be present. The more we receive the minute movement of the small stones on the hillside, the more able we are to quickly respond by accelerating our speed or tilting our body and so on. We are collaborating with our environment. And this is how we live the middle way. We can see now with this climate catastrophe which is approaching, that in the past we have behaved like the master, dominating the earth, changing everything according to our idea. But now it looks that we are the victim, that the earth is doing things to us we don't like. And this master-slave movement or dominant submissive movement is very common in our ways of dealing with ourselves, those around us, and the environment. So from Dharma, we have the encouragement to collaborate with everything and with everyone. And this wishing goodwill in all directions is the basis of our open-heartedness to the world. So I think you all got a copy of these 4 immeasurables. With this, we say, may all sentient beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. This is a very big welcome. When you go to school, maybe in the first 2 years, it's all very happy and easy. Then you start to get tests in the class. And as you get older, you get more national exams. And if you go to university, you're always under examination. Are you good enough? Do you belong here? If you go for a job, you get an interview. Then often you're on a probation period for 3 or 6 months where the manager is checking your performance. So we're very familiar with conditional welcome. Your welcome is determined by the qualities you manifest and whether they fit what we are looking for. Tests and interviews remind us that we can very easily be placed on the outside, waiting for other people to decide whether we can come in or not. We see this now with the crisis of immigration. Do we want to have these people in our country? What will they bring? Some people think they bring crime and disease. Some people think they bring cultural variety and new possibilities of developing the society. If we welcome them, they will change our culture. I'm happy to give something if they stay in their country, but if they come here, how they are will change my life. And this is true. So when we say, may all beings be happy, we're saying, may they be happy as they are, not as they are according to our interpretation, but as they are. So if the women are walking in our local town wearing a burqa, they are walking in our local town wearing a burqa. This is not right. This is not how we are. But actually, this is how we are now. Now we have a new color or a new flavor, a new variety of the possibilities of dressing and believing and cooking and so on. The vital point here is to see how we bring conditionality into our welcome. The more I open to you, the more I am going to change. If I take up the place of the boss, then you will have to watch me and fit in with me. But that's not a very warm welcome. If I say, you are welcome here, then your being here will impact me. And now my world is changed. That is to say, we have to combine generosity, and plasticity. So in Buddhism, we look again and again at the absence of inherent existence. That is to say, there is no unchanging personal essence to me. I have my sense of self, of course, through which I can evaluate the shifting patterns of how I am and give me a sense of, is this normal? Is this unusual? But this is a process, because the factors that I am looking at to see how I am doing are changing factors. If you tell me a joke and I laugh, and you think, oh, James really likes that joke, I'm going to tell him the same joke 100 times. It's not going to work. Once was enough. I liked the joke under these particular circumstances. It's quite difficult to make predictions about other people and also about ourselves. As perhaps we know, there are recommended 3 stages in our practice of Dharma. First, there is hearing or studying the Dharma, listening to teachings, reading books. Then at that stage, Dharma can seem quite straightforward. But the second stage is to reflect on it, to take the Dharma teaching and apply it to our own life and think, oh, does this illuminate my own experience? I'm forming a living relationship with the teachings. Through this, the Dharma reveals some of its nuance and complexity. The Dharma reveals more as we give more of ourselves to the Dharma. In that way, we start to see that Dharma is not a thing, it's a potential. It's like if somebody gives you a bulb, then you have to plant it and water it and get it the right amount of sunshine or shade. You nurture the Dharma that you learn, and then it starts to blossom. It blossoms for you. You have your experience of Dharma. On one level, this is the same Dharma as everyone else who studies, as if everybody was to eat a slice of this from the same big cheese. But when the cheese goes into your mouth, the taste which is revealed is determined by your taste buds and your habit of liking sweet or sharp and so on. So Dharma is relational. Everything is relational. When we come to fixed conclusions about people or places, cultures, and so on, this is simply an opinion. Our judgment is probably telling us more about our criteria than about the actual qualities of what we are making judgments about. This is why engaging in life, being in relationships, having hopes and fears, good days and bad days is very helpful for practice. We see that, oh, I am labile, I'm changing, I'm responsive, I'm not fixed. And therefore, perhaps I should be more cautious when I make judgments about other people. Perhaps the only thing we can say about other people is, oh, they're quite changeable. They are changeable, I am changeable, we have the possibility of changing together. So when we say, may all beings be happy and have the cause of happiness, we can have some general idea of what it means to be happy. When we're happy, we tend to be more relaxed in our body, we loosen the tension in the muscles and so on. We're open to what's around us, more able to enjoy experiences. We're less self-protective, more optimistic. But when we look at the second part of this first line, and it's saying, and have the cause of happiness, then on a relative level, you have a lot of differentiation. your main cause of happiness is chocolate ice cream, but mine is strawberry ice cream. I don't know how you can eat that. It's so sweet. So you are choosing the wrong path to happiness. Change your ice cream. So we often surprised at how other people live their lives. Why would they want to live that way? It makes sense to them. So on the level in which we take ourselves to be truly existing, to have a personality, a character, then the particularization of myself leads me to make specific choices from the repertoire of the potential of the environment that I live in. And you, with your character and personality, make very different choices. When we like people or love them and we want to increase their happiness, we have to find out what are the factors that make them happy. If we take ourselves to be normal and their difference for us to be a sign of their abnormality, we may try to impose our interpretation and selection of the world onto them. This kind of abusive attitude happens in families, in couples, between groups in society, between one society and another, between racial groups, and so on. And this is because we tend to generalize from the individual out into everything else. We think that I am the reliable one. What is good for me should be good for you. In many countries now, we have a tilt towards dictatorship. Even in so-called democracies, the presidents and leaders can act in a very top-down dominating way. But if we want to relate to other people, we have to go back to this capacity for plasticity, for molding ourselves into the shape that will give us optimal contact with the other. We have to have an empathic attunement. For example, if you like cats, you find that some cats are very friendly and sociable and they're always happy to come and rub against you. And for other cats, the fact that you regularly supply food is enough. They sit apart and look at you as if they're somewhat surprised that you're there at all. And so if you're going to relate to these cats, you have to find out their own structure and respond as they are. So on the relative level, that is to say, the interactive level, where we are responding to the manifest patternings of each individual as they come, as they show themselves moment by moment, then from the bodhisattva point of view, from the point of view of wanting enlightenment for all beings, then we take the position of the servant. We say, you first. You show yourself. How are you? When I see how you are, I will find a way to meet you. Which is a very, very beautiful and fascinating approach. I will take on plasticity and not enforce on you any change to your rigidity. Now, I use the term servant, which might seem like an inferior position. But generally from the point of view of Dharma, the more plastic, the more pliable, the more you can be like clay as a potential to mold into many different shapes, the better it is. But there is one very key principle here we have to visit again and again. When we take the Bodhisattva vow, we say, I will work for the benefit of others. We make this very big. In this and all my future lives, I will work for the benefit of others, whoever they are, however they are. Oh, you can see these Tanka paintings of the Buddhas going into the six realms. When the Buddha goes to the hot hells, he takes cooling water. And when she goes to this cold hells, she takes blankets. This is quite intelligent. Give the people what they need. That is to say, the situation of the other determines the behavior of the Buddha. To become enlightened is not to arrive in a place where work is finished, job's over, I don't need to do anything. Rather, on the path to awakening, we develop more skills of how to be adaptable and available. So this first verse in these four immeasurables is under the title of Chamba, love. Love means may all beings be happy. In our culture, we are under the power of the myth of romantic love. I love you. I give you all my love. So there's no love left for anyone else. And because of that, you have no need for any jealousy. You've got it all. There's no more available. You are special. This feels from a heart level something very wonderful, but it's quite narrow. And essentially, it's an exchange. Because if I give you all my love and you only give me half your love, that's no good. I gave you all my chocolate and now you only give me half of yours. I don't know if I want to be your friend anymore. Now, I give you all, you give me all, and we form a little love bubble. Unfortunately, after some time, little holes appear in the bubble and love starts to leak out. Jealousy is like the security guard of the love bubble. We all know the hopes and fears that are linked with romantic love. In this first line, the notion of love is completely different. I wish you well without any limit at all. Implied is this, and I will do my best to make you happy. I don't just want you to have happiness, but the cause of happiness. The cause of happiness is to be at home in yourself, to awaken to your Buddha nature, to awaken to the truth of who you are. This means that you are able to leave the theater. You don't have to be playing these karmic roles of fabricated identity anymore. You don't have to construct your sense of self, but you find yourself at peace in the open awareness which shines from the ground or the source, which is emptiness. Oh, may all beings find the actual ground or source of who they are. At the moment we take ourselves to be certain formations, you have the formation of your body. Some people have healthy bodies, others not so healthy bodies. Young bodies, old bodies. However the body is today, gradually it will change. When we were children, we had a certain tone of voice and vocabulary. Now we speak with different tones through the voice box, using different vocabularies. And our voice changes according to situation. It is again relational rather than internally defined. And the same with our mind. Sometimes we are full of emotion, sometimes we are thinking, maybe we have some paper to write, document to write for work or university or whatever, and you have to focus your mind in a very clear cognitive way. These are the ways in which we formulate, which is active, we formulate our identity. It's an activity of bringing myself into being, of making sense of what is going on. When we see this, we say, oh, because I'm having to make it, it's clearly not intrinsic. Otherwise, it would just be there. So when we want all beings, including ourselves, to have the cause of happiness, it's to release ourselves from the burden of self-creation and other creation. So by being released from this busy preoccupation, we become available for awakening to how it is, which is how it has been from the very beginning. The intrinsic never changes. The form, the compounded, the artificial is always changing. It's always vulnerable to the impact of other factors. This cause of happiness, this is Ye Sangye, this is primordial Buddhahood, which is present in the heart of all beings. All compounded things are impermanent. And whatever we try to construct will have necessarily some happy moments and some sad moments. No matter how hard you work in this world, how much money you get, how much power you get, you are still vulnerable to the opinions of others, to the arrival of diseases, and so on. The relative is relative. That is to say, it's relational. It arises in dependent origination. If you're in a relationship with someone else, you know that their moods have a strong influence on you. On the basis of how you are, I become. It's very difficult to be relaxed and happy if your partner is depressed and anxious. They get to you. Their mood flows into you, not just something out there. Oh, I can see that you are unhappy. Because the fact that you're unhappy is influencing me, flowing into me. So that's why this first verse is so important for us. On the level of formation of the organizing of the potential of the ground into patterns, we have to see these patterns are all vulnerable. They are all likely to change quite rapidly. But we also have the cause of happiness, which is awareness. Awareness is inseparable from emptiness. It's not a thing. In the world of things, we know that some things, some entities, some objects in the world make us more happy than other things. And we have all lived the truth of what the Buddha says, that there are two main modes of suffering, getting what you don't want and not getting what you do want. The world of formation, of manifestation is unstable. And in fact, the cause of our difficulty is that we try to stabilize the unstabilizable. So that's why we have to attend to the cause of happiness, which is the ground or source of how we are. So we'll look at that in more detail later. So now we have a break for 20 minutes, and then we meet together and go through the rest of these four immeasurables, and then take this further into the view of Dzogchen. Good. So have a good break. Okay, let's continue. So when we adopt this view of the first line of the four immeasurables, we're engaging in the process of de-rolling from the roles of samsara. Samsara arises on the basis of the polarities: good, bad, right, wrong, friend, enemy, special, ordinary. These polarities create a fundamental difference, or they provide the basis and support for our perceiving phenomena as inherently different. So if you fall in love with someone, you might say, you're so special. What we mean is, you're so special to me. I know your brother hates you. I know that your brother knows you better than me, but I think you're special. This is relational. But when we separate out the fact that this is my opinion, an opinion arising on the basis of the particularities of my personality, my impulses, and so on, then I speak the truth. You are special. In that way, I lie to you. Not, you're not objectively special at all. You are, you are relationally special. But when I turn your qualities into something self-existing, better than anyone else's, I confirm the integrity of your identity, that you are a true individual, and that I perceive these qualities. I believe that I see the real truth about you. Of course, we have all heard that love is blind, but it feels, no, 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 no. Love sees very clearly. So in that way, I go into a particular karmic formation. But when we say, may all sentient beings be happy, may the special and the ordinary be happy, may the special and the ordinary be happy, may the good and the bad be happy, then we are expansive. So it's very nice when you have a moment, especially if you can do it outside, you just say, may all sentient beings be happy, and really open your chest and open your arms in the most inclusive and expansive way. And then you really feel what that does to your shoulders and your heart. Because when we are open in this way, we're not defending ourselves. There is space for everyone. Romantic love is exclusive, but this love is inclusive. In the main orientation of Dharma is inclusivity. We find this in every aspect, in Tantra, Mahamudra, and so on, because non-duality is always inclusive. Duality, setting this against that, self against other, this is exclusive. So in the second line is saying, may all sentient beings be free from suffering and the root of suffering. There are, of course, many, many kinds of suffering. There's the suffering from events. You might be in a car crash and lose the capacity to walk. Due to this virus, many people have died. But certainly in Britain, the economy is not doing well. And many people are starting to lose their jobs. There are people living in islands in the Pacific where the level of the sea as it rises endangers their very residence in their home. It's very important to, if you listen to the news or if you just keep your eyes and ears open, to see the suffering in the world and to see how much conflict there is in the world. You look in the garden and you see the blackbird pecking away in the ground. Now it's pulling out a worm. Happiness for the blackbird, suffering for the worm. This polarity of experience in what you could take as the same situation occurs again and again. Life is difficult. We know that the bird population, certainly in Europe, is changing a lot. Many, many birds are dying out, certainly from Britain. As the sea warms up, the production of krill, these tiny creatures you get in the North Atlantic, in the Arctic, goes down. So this affects whales, this affects many kinds of fish, and it affects the birds that eat the fish. So it's not just that we are affected by climate change, but so many creatures, insects, reptiles, are all finding shifts in their environment. When we take up this Mahayana reflection that all beings have been our mother in a previous life, and you see the huge fires that were burning in Australia. So many insects and reptiles and animals were killed. Same with the fires in Siberia and in North America and in Brazil, in the forests. It's not just that the impact on humans. When we see all these other forms of life, each of which is not essentially different from us, we see how much suffering is arising. As the coral reefs start to die through the warming of the water, the fish which live around them don't have a shifted environment, and then they start to die off also. Suffering arises when we are born in a specific form and we take this to be the totality of our experience. If we feel pain, this is happening to me. I am suffering. Pain is arising. That is to say, a sensation is arising, which I identify as painful. Now, we know with humans, they have different pain thresholds. Some people don't want any injection if they go to the dentist. Other people want 4 or 5 to make sure they feel nothing. So again, we see pain is relational. It depends on how we relate to it, how we interpret it. If you go out climbing in the mountains and it's starting to rain and you get cold, some people will think, oh, this is the real life. This is the real adventure, a proper challenge. And other people are thinking, why am I here? Because we can open to situations or close to them. So again and again, we have to see, don't take words like happiness or suffering or misery as pointing to something precise objectively there. These are relational. Suffering arises when we experience that the stasis, the stability of our sense of who we are is being altered by the impact of events which could arise from within the body or outside the body. What is arising? Different kinds of sensation. Who is it arising for? Me. So this centralized organizational nexus that I call me, what is its true status? When we start to do some meditation and we sit and we observe the nature of the subject, I, me, myself, we find that it has no fixed content. I am happy. Now, excuse me, I start to experience a toothache. I am in pain. The happiness seems to vanish. Now I'm filled with this sense of pain. Oh, so I am like a vessel, like a pot or a container. One moment is full of happiness, next moment is full of pain. Someone says, hey, we're going out for a walk in the hills. Come, you enjoy it. Oh, I'm in pain. Go away. Leave me alone. When I'm full of the pain, there is no space for happiness. This is real. And then after some time, maybe put some clove oil, or you take some medication, or you go to the dentist, and it's not hurting. And now I am available for a different range of experiences. So often our focus of attention is on, as it were, the object side, on what is happening to me, for me, but as something. But who is the one who experiences this? If this pot is able to fill with happiness and then fill with suffering, then basically it's an empty pot. It doesn't have a content of its own, but when it fills with something, it claims that content as I, me, myself. So then we start to see, oh, what we call my ego self is a modality of identification. By identifying with the object side, the subject side is filled. This points to the non-duality, the lack of true separation between what we take to be self and what we take to be other. I am empty of self-content. I fill and empty all day long. I feel thirsty. As the drink is going into my mouth, the thirst is vanishing away without any sense of error or hypocrisy. I say truly from my heart, I am so thirsty. I am returned to myself in another mode. This is amazing. One glass of water transforms how I feel in my body, my muscular tension, my mood, my availability to look at the things around me. The reason for reflecting in this way is to see that when I'm full of pain, this is relational. It is not a definition of the truth of my being. By reflecting in this way, we are gradually softening this mental, this ideational barrier between what we take to be self and what we take to be the rest. When we suffer, we tend to be self-preoccupied. This can be linked with self-pity, with depression, and so on. May all beings be free of suffering. It means may they live in harmony, may they have balance, the balance of the 5 elements in the body and with the environment. If I observe the passage of the moon in 1 month, she seems to grow and to shrink. The seasons of the years go round. Life fades away, late autumn and winter. I also am going towards winter. This body starts to fade. This is not the cause of suffering. If we don't, it's just the seasons of life. It comes as it comes. When I was young, I had a lot of energy. Now I have less energy. I could, and sometimes I do feel a bit persecuted by not being as active as I was. I used to be able to do that. Life was easier then. But whose life was easier then? The pot was filled with that life. Now it's filled with this life. I can go to the doctor, I can go to the supermarket, but nobody can fill my pot with the energy of being 21. I am experiencing my seasonal pot filler. It is this. If I'm with this, then I'm living. If I relativize it, if I think about it in terms of how I used to be and feel a sad loss, or I think about the future, oh my God, it will get worse, and I have some fearful trepidation, then I am increasing my suffering. So this brings us to, well, what is the cause of suffering? Believing that the impermanent is permanent is a big cause of suffering. Believing that we have a true personal existence rather than that we are co-emergent with circumstances, this also is a big cause of suffering. The cause of suffering is misperception. That is to say, I develop an idea of how I would like to be, and then I impose it on other people and on myself. I want you to be like this. I want me to be like this. This is mental activity. How am I? Oh, it's like this. Nothing more to think about. Like the Buddha said, 4 main forms of suffering for the human being: birth, old age, sickness, death. So that's life. Nothing to do. Be with how it is and you are present in the moment of the emergence of your experience, then it is just like this. What is it? We can't say. Sensation in its immediacy, feeling in its immediacy, thought in its immediacy is ungraspable. But when you conceptualize sensation, you say, this is pain, this is a terrible pain, it's been there for 2 weeks, it's like this. You are relating to a construct of the pain, but the pain itself is not the same as the construct. When we read the life of Shakyamuni Buddha, clearly he had some physical difficulties from time to time. Certainly among Tibetan lamas, they often have sicknesses, they have cancers, all kind of things. They experience pain, but they do, as far as I can tell, and from my knowledge of different lamas, they don't increase the difficulty by developing a big narrative about what is happening. The Buddha's basic teaching is impermanent. All created things will vanish. Pattern of sensation arises and fades, arises and fades. But the narrative you develop about it gives you something to hold on to, as if there was an enduring truth to it. So, the cause of suffering, the basic cause, is not to be aware of your own unborn open ground. The ground is the actual, it's what is. It's simple, it just is. But when we don't allow ourselves access to this openness, because we are caught up in interpreting the world, making commentary on our experience, we create a film, a veil of narrative elaboration, which hides us from ourselves. So, with regard to, excuse me, with regard to meditation, the general guideline is don't talk to other people about your meditation experiences. Don't turn it into a story. When you talk about something or think about something, you create the separation of subject and object. So when you have meditation, sometimes it goes easily, sometimes it's very sticky and sinking, sometimes it's happy and light. However it is, that's how it is. In the view of Dzogchen, the great completion or the intrinsic whole, everything just is as it is. And then we simply open to how it is. This is not being persecuted by events. The event isn't coming and landing on you. Awareness is not a self. It doesn't have a position and a shape which is then battered by events. It's the luminous presence, which is here now for all of us in this moment, and life is passing through it. Before we were using the image of a pot that fills and empties. Awareness is not like a pot, it's like the sky. A pot has an enduring shape, even if the content is shifting. But awareness, rigpa, the fresh illuminating power of our empty mind, has no shape or color. When all kinds of experiences come and go, what should we do with them? Nothing. Now, what the texts say about our life is sometimes very challenging. If you're sick, be sick. Don't go running off and seeking for some kind of intervention. Because for meditators, the most important thing is to taste everything, including sickness. Sometimes when I was sick in Nepal, and I had various fevers and I was shaking, I was living in a small retreat place. There were two monks who would come and look in on me. I had a tiny room, and I was My whole body was shaking, so they went and they brought in an old tent and put it on top of me. And they said, "Oh yes, you're sick," which was not very comforting. But they just looked at me and said again, "Yeah, you're sick." And gradually, in my stupidity, I managed to see, oh, I am sick. This is being sick. Sweating, vomiting, having diarrhea. This is being sick. We could say, oh, but health is good and right, and sickness, this is wrong and bad and shouldn't happen. But when you experience, oh, this is sick. The text say, if you're dying, just die. But be present when you die. This is a big question for life in the West. If you are a criminal, you get put in prison. If you get old and sick, you might be put in the intensive care ward. People you don't know will be injecting you with all kinds of chemicals, putting all kinds of tubes into you. This makes your experience quite complicated, if not artificial. They're not cruel people or bad people, but they believe something must be done. But if you die when you're full of tubes, this is not so great. Being with pain, being with sadness, being with loneliness is also part of life. If you always bring in some management technique, some way of altering your situation, this can bring some helpful relief. We probably all know that having some painkiller is very nice when you're suffering a lot. It is helping me. Or your friends say, do you feel better? Yes, yes. So they say, oh, that's good. You're back to your old self. This is not our highest ambition in Dharma. I'm not suggesting you have to be some stoic hero. It's not about struggling to bear something intolerable, but to rest in awareness which is present with how it is. The ego self is the manager, the one that moves internal and external factors around in order to maintain a sense of continuity of who I think I am. The busy subject manipulates the field of objects in order to allow the self formation to be the way I want it to be. This is very busy. There is no end to this work. So, this is the sad paradox of samsara. The more you do to improve your situation, because you are acting inside the paradigm or the interpretive structure of duality, of a fundamental separation of self and other, every effort you make to improve your situation strengthens the basic disorder of the misperception of how it is. But again, we follow the middle way. We're not seeking mastery over all circumstances, but neither do we want to be a helpless victim of events. We're working with circumstances. So we are going to die. Having been born, death is inevitable. We don't know when, we don't know how, but given that death is an aspect of our embodiment, there's a time to seek interventions and medication and so on, and a time to die. And dying with minimal intervention is good. Because when you die, the elements of the body gradually dissolve one into the other. It's an experience of fading. It's like sunset. The light is going out, and gradually the outline of the trees gets more and more vague until everything is dark. So if you're out in the evening in a forest, you might want to have a torch, because when the forest is really dark, you won't find your way. So when you're dying, what is the torch? You have the torch of consciousness, the conceptual lamp of interpretation, and we also have the unchanging lamp of awareness. If someone is dying, it's not very helpful to ask them, how are you feeling? Because you're inviting them to conceptualize their experience, which is to rest inside their ego construction. How are they? If they are meditators, they relax and open, and all kind of experiences are arising. What are these experiences? How you understand them depends on the view. You might see it as the fading of the five skandhas. You might see it as the shift of the five elements. You might be visualizing yourself as a deity and entering into the death process as you would in a meditation practice when you dissolve the form of the deity into emptiness. Or you might simply rest in open awareness without any constructive intention at all. When you practice Dharma, you learn to open yourself in different ways. Western medical doctors don't know these things. Very often, friends and family don't know these things. So they come towards you from their particular interpretive structure. So it's very important to explore for yourself when you are working with circumstances, making a minimal intervention that will help you stay present. And when you're taking up a position of strong duality, there is life and there is its enemy, which is death. And we have to resist death as much as possible. So we should use whatever techniques we have, putting some line into the throat, some blood transfusions, whatever is necessary will keep me alive. But to keep this me alive is to keep not just the body alive, but the ego. The ego is a role developed in the theater of ignorance. And if we want to die into the open spaciousness of the Buddha's heart, then we have to allow it to happen. Not struggling, but being present and aware. Not the strength of resistance, but the strength of acceptance, which is not a victim position. The root of suffering is to interpret things as happening to me. So again and again in our practice, we want to take this pot, this reference point of our ego identity and allow it to dissolve so that the space of awareness is revealed. Then this allows us to be closer to other people. When somebody you know has difficulties, you don't smother them in your concepts. You can just quietly be with them. You don't need to say anything because you're meeting them in the silence of the connection of sky to sky. When this is deep and open, this is exactly the direct transmission of the Buddha's mind. But if you give voice to sympathy and understanding and reassurance and so on, you're calling the other person into their ego self-presence. And this is not a good thing to do. It's our socially approved way of relating. You say, I'm so sorry to hear this about you. What's my sorrow going to do? Neither sorrowful nor happy, just present, available. Profound availability, the inclusivity of the Dharma Dhatu as it manifests through our open mind is allowing events to be as they are. So, wanting all beings to be free of suffering, when we look at it from a meditator's point of view, we are saying, may all beings rest in the presence which is undisturbed by the flow of self-arising, self-liberating experience. Okay, so we take a break now, and I hope the translators have a good break. And we come back at in English time 13:30, I guess European time that's 14:30, and for other people you have to work it out. So have a good break. Bye. Okay, shall we continue? So this next verse is speaking of the happiness which is free of all suffering. We all need that. So in Tibetan Buddhism, there are many kinds of classifications and discussions of how you can think about things. They generally point to basic principles we've already touched on. So, for example, there's Zakchegi Dewa and Zakmeki Dewa. The first speaks, Zakpa means to leak away, to be exhausted, to be lost. So the happiness which leaks away, which we lose, is always based on causes and conditions. Everything which has a beginning, which has a cause, will come to an end. That it is compounded. Various factors operate together to bring this into being. So for a child, if you take them to the park, part of their happiness is that they can run and jump. And then they say, I want to go on the swings. And they're very excited and they're pulling your hand. But when you get there, the other children are already on the swings. And you say you have to wait. Then their level of happiness goes down. And we can observe this for ourselves. Even very small variations from our hope or our intention can bring about suffering. The second kind of happiness, the happiness that doesn't leak away, is not arising due to causes and conditions. This is the happiness which is intrinsic to awareness. Now, it's quite difficult to talk about this because we have terms like happiness, joy, bliss, fulfillment, satisfaction, and there's a shifting movement between these terms. So the happiness which doesn't leak away is more what we will call satisfaction. Or it's like the whole, it's the complete experience. In fact, it is the happiness of the whole, of the infinite. The infinite doesn't stand in relation to anything else because everything is within the infinite, all finites. The shifting patterning of the finite moments doesn't alter the openness or completion of the whole. So this links to what we looked at just before the break. The ego self is the mode of our participation in the dualized field, the field of separate entities. And it's drawn towards judgment, looking at options, choosing, and creating patterns. And we can observe this very easily in ourselves. We walk down the street, we're checking things out. Some people are checking out cars to see if they would like to buy that one. They're checking out dogs to see if they could get that kind of dog. Architecture. We look at things with our agenda. So whenever we find ourselves engaging with what is occurring from an evaluative matrix, that's a sign that we are in this ego constellation. But the happiness or the satisfaction that doesn't leak away is simply open. It's present with what is occurring. And because it's not looking for anything in particular, it's not disappointed. So I would imagine most of you are familiar with the idea of the three kayas or the three bodies or aspect of the Buddha. The Dharmakaya is the mind of the Buddha, which is inseparable from emptiness. On the basis of this, he manifests the Sambhogakaya, the body of enjoyment. This body of enjoyment means he is able to enjoy everything. He or she, the Buddha, is enjoying the rich display of the potential of the empty ground. So wherever you're sitting, if you just look around you, some people can see outside, some people see inside. You might see walls, chairs, tables, cups, trees, whatever. When we see the treeness of the tree for us is embedded in our concept of the tree. Often we are 80–90% concerned with the conceptual structure that we use to identify the tree, which leaves only 10–20% available for simple perception. But for the Buddha, she sees everything as light. We also see everything as light, but we instantly think about what we see in terms of concept, because we want to make sense of what is happening. And so we pull the moments of experience into our interpretive matrix. The Buddha does this very, very little, only in terms of compassion and connection with other people. We are interested in comparing and contrasting. For example, there are people who travel around in England to establish the oldest trees in England. You can get little maps that show you how to visit the 100 oldest oak trees in England. So you arrive at the tree and, wow, this is a very old oak tree. Just look at this old oak tree. What do you see? A very old oak tree. Oh, I'm so glad we came here. It's quite something. I mean, now we have photographs of this very old oak tree. Buddhas don't need this kind of hobby as a protection against boredom. Something is there. Old tree, young tree, doesn't matter. It matters inside our relative domain. So when you walk through the forest to get to this very old oak tree, because you're looking for old oak trees, this orientation makes the young oak trees, of which there are many, not very interesting. So you can observe this for yourself. Once you enter into selectivity based on a hierarchy of qualities that you use to evaluate whatever it is you come in contact with, then it's very easy to say, this is the best oak tree, this is middling oak tree, this is not very interesting oak tree. But the Sambhogakaya, this Sambhoga means with enjoyment, means we find enjoyment with everything. We approach everything with an open availability, which allows the unique specificity of each moment to show itself in its richness. So maybe at this point we look a little bit at the two truths, relative and absolute truth. Although it's called relative truth, it's more like a relative fiction, because it's concerned with what is made up, what is invented, what is imagined. I suggested that you read this chapter by Patrul Rinpoche that's in Simply Being. It's very straightforward, I think. So he's showing that when you take subject and object as separate, the particularization of the subject of yourself is paralleled by the sense of the particularization of whatever you encounter. So we are operating in a domain of reification of the perception or interpretation of whatever we see as being an example of something. So many different names for different kinds of trees. And a tree is not a bush. So we have qualities which we use in order to discriminate between the particular forms that we encounter. This looks as if it could be quite a neutral description. However, our minds are also permeated by the 5 poisons. In this later Mahayana and early Tantra, we see that there are 8 consciousnesses which exist as a chakra in the heart. So you had the five sense consciousnesses, and the sixth consciousness, the mental consciousness, which is their kind of manager and the one that sorts out which aspects are to be privileged at any moment. But the seventh consciousness is the consciousness of the consciousness permeated by the flavors of these five poisons. Although we focus on five, there are many, many subtle variations. So the first is called timuk, means mental dullness. Mental dullness means you don't get it. For example, I don't get football. If I had to watch a football match on television, I would feel completely crazy. I don't have any way of attuning with what is going on. What arises in my mind is, what is this? Why are they doing it? Why are people there? What are they shouting about? Sometimes this term is translated as stupidity, but it's not a sign of an absence of intellectual power. It's more an indication of a limitation of sympathy or availability. I have no affinity with football. I have no way of entering into that domain. And this applies to, for me personally, to motor cars and many, many things in the world. I probably could intellectually understand them, but I'm not open to them. So in that way, as I move towards the environment, I'm already predisposed to focusing more on some aspects than on others. We all have this quality. I remember going with Sia Lama to a museum. We looked at all these glass cases, exhibitions, painting and pottery and so on. He looked completely bored. Then we came to the end of a corridor and there was a glass case full of dolls in traditional Tibetan costume. And his mood completely changed. He was talking in great detail about what that country, that area of Tibet was like, what they ate, why the women had their hair up in this particular shape. Siya Lama was in no way a stupid person. But when he looked at the other exhibits in the museum, there was no resonance for him. When we are in this world, we find that there are many objects, many pathways which are not for us. This is a kind of implicit bias. It's not a bias based on a judgment saying this is rubbish. It's more like an energetic bias. We easily find ourselves turning towards something, but not to others. So from this sense of differential value and the seeming solidity of the items that we encounter, we're drawn to some things, we feel desire or interest or a need to know more. And towards other things, we feel distaste, no interest, aversion, maybe hostility, anger. Once this pulsation of desire and anger, of yes and no, is functioning in the mind, then pride arises when we assert for ourselves a meaning of certain qualities we take ourselves to have. And jealousy occurs when we feel that our entitlement to access with a person or a place or whatever is under attack by the competitive power of someone else. Now, these flavors or tilts or colorations pervade every moment of our life. So we see something and an opinion about it arises almost simultaneously. This brings an emotional quality to our experience in life. And this is what Pater Rinpoche clearly describes in the text as impure relative truth. Because not only am I seeing individual phenomena seemingly existing in and out of themselves, but I see them imbued with the qualities that I feel about them. So I'm quite happy to say football is boring. Now, clearly, it's not boring for millions and millions and millions of people. But when I have to watch it, I feel it's boring. It is boring. The boringness is outside. So it's very important you try to observe this process in yourself. That what you see as being inherent in the object is actually an attribution projected by you into the object. There are two things here. There is the basic reification or belief that this object exists, and there's the qualities that we see as inherent in the object. And so in impure, what is called impure relative truth, these two factors are merged together. It's very helpful to take a little time to listen to political discussion, because there you can see this operating very directly. And for example, Mr. Trump is extremely good at projecting value and qualities into other people. So again and again, he says, Sleepy Joe Biden. And it comes to seem to be the truth about Joe Biden. This is a function of advertising in consumerist capitalism, to try to get the message that you want to make about the product seem to actually be an intrinsic quality of the object. So they advertise Coca-Cola, it's the real thing. Of course, it's a very good example of something which is not in the least real. But if you tag it's the real thing onto it, it creates a kind of aura of meaning. So in the practice, we want to recognize this affective perception of the object and see that the affect belongs to me. It's not arising on the basis of the true quality of the object, but it's my opinion about the object. It's very powerful. So, for example, in kindergartens, small children often develop very strong sense of how other children are. Why don't you play with Maria? She's horrible. She's not horrible. Look, she's playing with the other children. Go and play with her. She's horrible and they're stupid. I'm not playing. Children often understand this very directly. If I say I don't like her, this points back to me and might indicate that there is a problem with me. What's wrong with you? You don't like Maria. Much better to say she's horrible. The problem is out there. So when we start to reflect on ourselves, generally in life, when we're studying or when we're doing our practice, we start to see how easily we project our own biases and feeling tone onto the world around us. So we want to arrive at pure relative truth, where although the phenomena of the world still seem to be separate and to have their own existence, we are aware of our response to them as our subjectivity and don't see it as present in the object. And then with absolute truth, the perception of truly existing objects dissolves. There are no separate phenomena. This doesn't mean that everything's homogenized. there is the precise detail of everything which we perceive, but it has the clarity of the variety of light arising from the ground. So with this, maybe we see more clearly what is the meaning of the Sambhogakaya and its quality of enjoyment. When our rough prejudice has been released, we're not arriving at each moment already positioned in terms of what I like and what I don't like. We're open to what is coming. What is coming is this. What is it? It's this. When you see the thisness of things, the thusness of life, it's just, absolute clarity without need of further conceptual interpretation or the addition of an emotional reaction. So this maybe gives us a sense of what the text means when it says, may all beings never be separated from the happiness which is not touched or mixed with any kind of suffering. When we see that, the difficulty is my own mind, it's not in the object out there, but it rests on my belief that things are real, really existing in and of themselves. Secondly, my belief that some things are truly good and others are truly bad. And then thirdly, my sense that the good things will make me happy and the bad things will make me unhappy. And so I feel desire and aversion. Now we're like as if we're walking in the Himalayas. We've got very high peaks and deep valleys. This is wonderful. That is terrible. And when we experience things in this way, we have this emotional turmoil turning around inside us. And it seems true and honest to say, I am upset because of that. I was fine until you said that to me. Look how unhappy you've made me. And this is how we experience our suffering in samsara. Someone is doing this to me. So I have to try to manage how other people are near me. But this is very hard to do. People suddenly say things. Why did you say that? So when self and other are strongly real, it is the band of pure relative truth. It very easily tumbles down into impure relative truth because how you are impacts me and my feelings go up and down. Although you are not me and I'm just me, the way you look at me makes me happy or sad. The tone of your voice makes me happy or sad. The words you use make me happy or sad. Oh, I don't have any real independence from you. And this is why in Dharma, again and again, we look at this issue of separate ego identity. As long as I feel I am someone, somewhere, that I am different from you, then whatever happiness I get can easily be turned into suffering. So then we come to the fourth aspect, equanimity. So we say, may all sentient beings have the equanimity which is free of bias. Bias in favor of friends and relatives, and bias against enemies and strangers. These are my friends. I impute to them certain positive qualities. These are my enemies. I impute certain negative qualities. These enemies of mine are horrible people. I don't like them. I don't trust them. I don't want anything to do with them. This sounds like my relation to football. I'm sure that the quality belongs out there in the object, but my enemies have friends. How is It's possible. Because what I experience in my enemy is not definitive of my enemy. I think it is definitive of the object, but in fact, it is descriptive of the relationship. I believe this person is my enemy because I don't like what they do to me. I am making them my enemy by how I think about it. So when we read the Mahayana Sutras and we reflect on, for example, this functional belief, all beings have been my mother in a previous life, you see, oh, this person has negative qualities. But the reason they have negative qualities is because when they were my mother in a previous life, in order to feed me, they had to steal and they had to cheat other people. And now there is the ripening of these bad actions that were committed for my benefit, and they appear as someone horrible. Whether you are able to believe in the truth of this or not, it's important to see the function. It's about de-realizing the other. When we see the other as real and truly what we think they are, we are prisoners of our own projection. So it's very helpful to become aware of your own bias and prejudice, to see that there are many things that you don't like that other people like. Being embodied, you are going to have these tendencies. It's not so much about stopping having these projections, but about recognizing how that they operate and what the consequence of their operation is. So when I'm being very stupid, I might say, I don't like the Chinese. I don't like them because of what they did in Tibet. Tibet, for me, is important, and the Chinese, not so important. If I am particularly stupid, I then think, oh, Tibetan Buddhism is really important, and Han Chinese culture is worthless. They are terrible people, the Chinese. They went to Tibet. They believed that Tibetan Buddhism was very bad. Because of that, they destroyed the monasteries. They burned the books. They destroyed the sculpture. They are very prejudiced. Me, I'm not prejudiced. I'm just giving you an honest description of the truth. The best place for prejudice to hide is in a wrapper of truth. So I am biased against the Chinese. At that time, certain aspects of the Chinese government was very prejudiced against Tibetan culture. But mine is a holy prejudice. And they have a materialistic prejudice. These are very good ways to be stupid. So we have to see clearly how prejudice operates in our mind. And again, not push it away, but observe how prejudice distorts your perception of the world. Equanimity means that we have an even, open attitude to everything. So when we are infected with unrecognized prejudice, then it's very easy to imagine that we are being balanced and even when we are really quite tilted. So this kind of reflection is a sort of spring cleaning, that you really look at what has been accumulating dust inside yourself, which has not been moved around for a while, which seems to be a fixed belief. Okay, we'll take a break there for 20 minutes. Okay, bye. Okay, are we about ready? Good. So the general title for today was, or is, Dissolving the Enemies of Love. We find ourselves living in our body, pursuing the various things we have to do to earn some money or to maintain the structure of our life. We try to make and maintain connections with various people. We know that maintaining relationships over time is quite difficult. As we get older, we may well lose connection with the people we were at school with. People who were once very important fade out of our lives. So this is embedded in the structure of duality, of the seeming inherent difference between and separation of subject and object. We seek connectivity. We try to make connections and maintain them. In Britain, because of the atrocious management of the virus issue, we have had a very long lockdown. People have been separated from those near to them for a long time. And this gives rise to all kinds of mental health problems. Connectivity is the basis of our health and survival. We live in cultures where there's interconnection between all the different kinds of occupation, the growers of food, the suppliers of food, the people who make the pans in which we cook the food, and so on. So that means we develop patterns of connectivity around different kinds of products and so on. But because modern consumerist capitalism requires a rapid turnover of stock of the supplies in shops and warehouses. So, for example, I might buy a pair of shoes and I wear them for some years. They become more and more comfortable, but at a certain point, I need new shoes. I go back to the shop and say, I'd like another pair of these shoes. And they say, oh, we don't make these anymore. But they're very good. Oh, but we don't sell them. Find this with many kind of items, especially with technology, which keeps shifting every few years. So here we see a structural conflict. The fact of impermanence, which manifests through the shifting patterns of interdependence, and my or our desire for secure, stable connectivity. Until the beginning of this year, I was flying a lot. I felt a connection with different airlines, airports, and so on. I knew how to get there, how long it would take, and so on. Now, with the virus, this tiny thing that I can never see with my own eyes, I don't really want to go on an airplane. So, this is very strange. And so, what felt like pathways of my being in the world turned into walls in front of me. Relative connectivity is always vulnerable. So we want something which will be more reliable and intrinsic connectivity, which is not influenced by the shifting patterns of like and dislike, available, unavailable, and so on. There are many practices and paths in Buddhism to increase our felt sense of belonging, inclusion, and connection. We looked a little bit at the bodhisattva orientation. Then we also have the understanding of emptiness through Madhyamika analysis. That we see that because there is no inherent existence in phenomena, not only do they lack a true essence inside them, but the seeming skin that they have around them is not dividing this from that. I am drawing these outlines onto the world. And when I relax my reliance on my idea about what is there and directly attend to the actuality of how this is, then we see, oh, as the text says, it's like writing on water. As experience is arising moment by moment, there is no stable surface. If I look out my window, I can see, or I think I can see, the pavement, cars that are parked on the road. What arises is that light is coming from these various surfaces into my eye. What I see is light. On the level of light, all of these seeming objects are the same. They are just light. But I formulate my interpretive idea, and on that basis, I say, this is a new expensive car. This is an old, not very expensive car, not very valuable car. But this is like taking your finger and writing your name in a bowl of water. As your finger moves along, the first letters are dissolving and dissolving. So I might have a thought, that's an expensive car. Then the thought arises, but it's very ugly. Then I think, oh, it's putting all these diesel fumes in the air. So with its first thought, oh, it's an expensive car, this has a particular feeling tone to it. But then by the time I decide, oh, it's polluting the air, the feeling tone is very different. The car is being reformed in the quality of my interpretation. And the more we see that there is no objective basis of truly existing entities, and that how I interpret the cars is arising from my memories, my thoughts, my moods, maybe something I read in the newspaper, all kind of little patterns of energy arise and formulate interpretations of the car. So if my mind is always changing and my opinions about the object don't actually stick on to something, why am I spending so much time talking about a world that doesn't really exist? The more I rely on my interpretive thoughts, the more I create these waves of hopes and fears, like and dislike. So once we start to see, oh, although it feels important and socially it may feel necessary, actually developing a lot of thoughts about the world is divisive. Okay, so what will I do with these thoughts? Maybe I need to get rid of them. That's how it can feel. I don't want to be persecuted by my judgmental thoughts. But the thoughts themselves are vanishing, just like writing on the water. The thought is there, and then it dissolves. It doesn't need to be dissolved by some activity. It is self-dissolving. Interpretations, appearances, ideas about things arise and then pass. And as these thoughts and interpretations are arising, they seem to generate patterns which indicate inherent difference. But there is no inherent difference, because the fabricator, the maker of the felt sense of difference has already dissolved, vanishing moment by moment. Thoughts arise, feelings arise, arising and vanishing. They are self-arising and self-vanishing. Now, we have to be clear what this means. I can look across the street and see the bricks in the wall of the house on the opposite side. The house is about 140 years old. The bricks have been stacked on each other for a long time. They don't change. That is a level of description. According to a certain level of magnitude, we say these bricks don't change. We don't want the bricks to change, otherwise the house will fall down. We seem to be directly seeing an inherent stability in the bricks. But I don't see bricks. I see light. I imagine bricks. In this road that I live in, there are many foxes. When the foxes run up and down the road, they're not counting bricks. The birds that fly by are not commenting on the quality of the bricks. Bricks are human thought items. That is to say, we learn the word brick when we are small. Our parents buy us little colored bricks of wood and we pile them up on top of each other. Each time you pile up the red on top of the yellow, then the green, what you see is a pattern, a display of color. You lift the brick, you have sensation in your fingers. You build the bricks up, and then you knock them down and they make a noise and you laugh. You don't need a concept of bricks. There was color, noise, shape, sensation. The perceptual world shows color next to color. We see the color as indicating the green brick is not the same as the yellow brick. But this is how we are being taught to speak. We merge the concept in the perception. We see green when there is a shape. Once you start to name the shape as square, rectangular, cubic, and so on, you're taking an interpretive notion as somehow giving more meaning to what is there. But all the little colored bricks lying on the carpet are there at once. You turn the box upside down, they roll about in a chaotic pattern, you make little towers and so on. We interpret separate entities, but all of these phenomena are being displayed within the field of experience. They arise as our experience. They are within the sphere or the tigli of our experience. This is their intrinsic connectivity. They are moments within this big moment of what is displayed. When I put my hand out to take hold of the little brick, if I'm a small child, I don't even need to know the word for hand. I just take this and bang it and maybe chew it a little bit. The tension in my hand, the color of the brick, taking it to my mouth, this is a flow of experience. Big people then say, "Oh, what are you doing? Don't try to eat that." The small child is not trying to do anything. They are doing something. They are participating in the field of experience. This is the intrinsic connectivity of everything. Our body is part of the environment. Sound is coming into our ears. Our hands are going out and touching. There is a pulsation with these factors of the field of experience. So there is a belonging and inclusivity. We are on the inside of what is occurring. But we have a lot of karmic potential that pulls us easily into the socialization of talking about things. So the field of love, which, as we looked at the very beginning today, means the field of inclusion. May all beings be happy. May everything be seen as it is, as an aspect of the Buddha mind. This inclusion comes under attack. There are enemies or forces which act against the whole, which act against the seamless integrity of every aspect of what is occurring. So traditionally, we look at this in Buddhism in terms of the relation between the ground or the source or the openness, impossible to express in language, but this vastness within which we exist, this source or field or ground has no beginning and end. It is infinite, not finite, meaning it has no handle on it. It has no basis for apprehending it. This is the basis of our presence at the moment. When you turn your head and you look around, moment by moment, new fields of experience show themselves. Now I look out the window again and I see the bricks. Well, I think I see the bricks. I think the bricks I see. What I see is not what I saw before. The sun has gone behind a cloud. So the light that I take to be coming off the brick is different in color. What is has changed. What is the perceptual field is always changing. But I stabilize myself by apprehending, by taking hold of it through the projection of the concept as being the truth of the phenomena. This happens every moment. Each moment of our life, we stand in front of two swing doors. One is the door to reification, enclosure, solidification, and the other is the door to openness, the door which is always open. When we look through the open door, we see this open display, color, sound, this basic potential, which then displays itself in many forms. The sound solidifies or thickens itself into words. The sound is thickening by the addition of fine powder of concepts. So I hear Taisha saying clang. This is a wonderful sound. Clang, clang. So in German, it means something, but for me, it's just a nice sound because I don't have my German powder to thicken the soup. I have this light, delicious consomme of clang, light, refreshing soup. And if you add your German powder, then it becomes like a thick potato soup. Oh, it's like that. It becomes more heavy. But just as sound, there is something there. So in our practice, again and again, we release our impulse, our energetic, charged up impulse to add value. Less is more. When the text says pure from the very beginning, if it's pure, if it's simple, it's complete just as it is. It doesn't need anything added to it. It has its own particular flavor. That particular flavor. This, this is the clarity of the mind that stays with the freshness of how it is. When I lived in India, I was often surprised that when people were eating different kinds of fruit, sometimes guavas and so on, they would add some masala powder, some spices and particularly pepper onto the fruit. And some people, even though the food has been cooked with some salt, when the plate is put in front of them, they always add salt because they're used to the taste of salt. Salt is the medium of taste for them. Salty lets them know, this is food. So we do the same. We add concept. Now we recognize what it is. By relying on the concept, we have our interpretation. But what we actually have is a kind of untidy or disorderly co-emergence. When you walk down the street, so many different colors, shapes, sounds are arising and passing moment by moment. If you don't edit it into its familiar patterning, you have something you can't make sense of. It's too much. It's too much for the ego consciousness, this interaction of the eight consciousnesses, to apprehend and create shapes. So in Dzogchen, our interest is to love the raw, love the uncooked. When you open yourself to the rawness of immediate sensation, you're in touch with the potential of the ground. This can then be directed in infinite pathways because it is, if you like, the raw, it's not material, but the raw potential of all the possibilities of samsara and nirvana. If you already add salt, it will taste of salt. So when you add, I like it, I don't like it, this is expensive, this is cheap, you are putting masala onto it, you're putting some flavoring into the world. So you never taste the raw. Then you follow the flavors that you got to know and like. I know what I like, and I like what I know. This way you seal yourself into a reassuring familiarity. And this forms a kind of film over the world, which seems to give it a kind of reliable surface. Because if you rely on concepts, every time you repeat the concept, you seem to stabilize the phenomena. So if I say it's a brick, the same brick, the sameness of the brick is reassuring. I seem to know something definite. But this is very, very important for meditators. Is the sameness of the brick in the brick or in your mind? When you observe the brick, you find it is an experience in your mind. You are telling the brick it's a brick. The brickness of the brick is your concept. Huh. How is this reassuring? My thoughts, memories, plans, likes regarding the brick change. This is not to say that it's an idealistic view or everything is just imagined by the mind. That would be an extreme view on the other side of a stable objective materialism. In the middle way, we see, oh, my access to the brick is through experience. I have the immediate perception of the brick, but even if I take the brick to a laboratory and I grind a bit off the end and start to examine it in various ways, each of these steps is an experience that I have. My access to what I take as the object is through the subject. The subject and the object can't be separated. They are born together, ever moving in a linked syncopation. There are no things. Things are thoughts. If you think in a particular way, you live in a world of things. The conceptual powder thickens the light, immediate, direct experience into the conceptualization of the thing. Now, this might sound all very abstract and not very useful, but I'm trying to point out the basis by which we have the lived experience that there are real other separate people. And because we see people as separate with their own separate qualities, we inevitably come into liking and not liking. And in that way, infinite inclusivity, infinite welcome, infinite love that is appreciative of whatever is occurring becomes hidden for us. So when we do the meditation practice, our main focus is to stay relaxed and uninvolved. We're not uninvolved by turning away from what is happening. We are uninvolved because of the clarity of our presence. The ego self is dependent for its continued sense of existence on its fusion with phenomena. Just as a painting is dependent on the patterning of the colors, sometimes you read that a disturbed person has gone to an art gallery and poured paint over a Rembrandt. How could they do that? Can't they see how wonderful it is? The value of the painting is in the patterning and the provenance. But when we look in a mirror, the reflections in the mirror arise and go, arise and go. The clarity of the mirror is its showing of the reflection. There is no particular pattern of reflection which is more true to the mirror than any other. The ego is like a painting. It's always trying to maintain and develop particular shapes, whereas our awareness is open and receptive and welcoming to many, many possible shapes. When we say, may all beings be happy, happy in their way, on their terms, and we will be with them in our plasticity. In that moment, we start to see, I am a showing. I'm not a thing. Sometimes I show happy, sometimes I show sad. If we describe ourselves in this way, it is as if there is an enduring Jamesness, a kind of noun of James, and then there are adjectives and adverbs describing the different moods which James might show. We want there to be a noun, a thing, because that gives us the continuing point of reference. Ah, yes, James, sometimes he's like this, sometimes he's like that. The fact that James is Jamesing, is showing many, many different moods, attitudes, and so on. Oh, these are all the qualities of James. So the expansive range is bound back onto some personal essence. But when you relax and you experience yourself walking, talking, being with other people, are you doing yourself? Who is making you you? If you are yourself, how are you maintaining yourself? Because surely it's true that you find yourself saying things that you didn't know you were going to say. So actually, I'm not the factory manufacturing me, but I am the space within which the potential of the ground displays itself. That the qualities which manifest are not signs of some essential Jamesness, but are the energy of the connectivity between how we are and the ground. So I'm sitting here in London looking at a computer screen. I don't like computers very much, so it's not my highest pleasure. But I see some lovely faces, and I remember actually meeting you, and I feel happy. Nice as your representation is, it's not as alive as meeting you in person. Nonetheless, I'm speaking, I'm trying to connect through this little green light in front of me. Who is speaking? Maybe my throat is speaking. Some wobbling occurs that makes the sound come out. A vibration of air. The thought comes through the mind. Thought is passing through the space of the mind. The sound is passing through the space of the throat. I find myself doing it, yet I am not the doer of the doing. In this way, if you look in the tradition, it is wisdom gives rise to compassion. Wisdom means the wisdom of emptiness, to see that the open, empty ground has no division of self and other. Self and other arise together in this field as the play of communication. So, on one level, it's true that I'm talking, but I'm not talking. Talking is talking me. Talking is talking me, just as walking is walking me. the verb is primary, the noun is like a kind of virus. Movement is the quality of energy. Stillness is the quality of emptiness. Entities and really existing things is the quality of stupidity. So this is what we have to live moment by moment. Don't comment on your experience. Don't interpret it. Don't try to make sense of your life. Allow the ever fresh revelation of life as it comes. Then you start to be able to trust that you don't have to think so much. So this is something to really keep close to you and observe your own life. It's not something to believe. It's the truth of your own life, which will be revealed to you if you don't tell yourself in advance how you are. Okay, we take a break now, the last break, and then we have our final time together. So another 20-minute break. So in a brief, the enemies of love are any positions which are exclusive. Love is the universal embrace. So in the tradition, we say love is wanting all beings to be happy, to be well, and kindness or compassion is wanting them to be free of suffering. So the basis of exclusivity is forgetfulness of the ground. All phenomena arise from and in and as the energy of the ground. When the ground is not attended to, when we are momentarily distracted into the delusion that there are truly separate existing entities, then confusion begins. It's not even as if there are two stages. First, you forget the ground, and then you have entities. The arising of the sense of separation is the forgetfulness of the ground. This, as it were, first moment of ignorance is referred to as the singular self or the singular entity. In Tibetan, it's Dagni Chikpu. Dagni means the, if you like, the essence of I. That means this kind of density or thingness. And Chikpu means soul or solitary, stands alone. Dagni is also used sometimes to refer to the leader or the boss. As soon as there is a separation, then there is a context for the separation. The self doesn't stay alone for very much. Why is this? Because the ground is ceaselessly displaying itself. The mind is unborn, it's not a thing, but it's also unceasing. Means moment by moment, from the very beginning, there is this and this and this. How this will be cannot be predicted in advance. It is the fresh breath of the ground. And so when there is this condensation or densification into a seeming separation, it doesn't stand alone. It is within the flow of experience. Before we looked at this familiar image of writing on water. So it's the same, if you had a bowl of water and you put your finger in it and turn it quickly to make a circle, it's already dissolving. So you have to do it again. Or in another traditional example, if you are outside at night and you have a fire and you take a stick from the fire and turn it around your head, it gives the illusion of a circle of fire. There is no circle, but as long as your hand is turning at the right speed, it will appear to you that there is a circle of fire. So the illusion or the delusion of separation is movement. It is an ongoing movement of separation. Sometimes we have the experience of being at one with the world, maybe swimming in the sea or lying on a beach. You just, not many thoughts in your head, and it's just as if it's all there together, including you. In that moment, you're not separating yourself. It's not that you're joining yourself to what is there. It's that you've stopped the unnecessary tormenting process of separating yourself. It's not that we have to find our Buddha nature, or that we have to integrate with the pure Buddha nature. When we talk in that way, it still centralizes the ego as the hero. I will overcome all obstacles and realize my true nature. But Mr. Ego, surely you are the obstacle to the revelation of the Buddha. So please don't try to make it better. It is your effort that makes it worse. You're not the doctor, you're not the medicine, you're the poison. So that's what we have to see, which is why in Dzogchen we're not trying very hard. Samsara is a sign of excessive effort, the effort of maintaining a delusion. Everything has its season and its time. When we resist that, we have a lot of trouble. It's quite difficult for us to realize that arising and passing is the truth of life. We see in Belarus at the moment that many people are protesting against the government. The dictator has been in power a long, long time, and he doesn't want to go. More money goes to the secret police. This was the same in Zimbabwe under Mugabe. The dictator says, I am the father of the people, I am the savior of the people. And while they say that, they're building more torture camps and underground prisons. It's difficult when you are so committed to being the special one to let go and just be ordinary again. This is the same for us. Our ego is very active, doing things, worrying, making plans, arranging, managing. The instructions say from the very beginning, everything has been perfect. It's fine as it is. But we don't see that perfection. Just as a person who suffers from obsessive compulsive disorder cleans the bath, sees that the bath is clean, but believes that the bath is dirty, and so they clean the bath again. So the ego, in its love affair with ideas, with imagination, with concepts, doesn't see the simple perfection of life as it is. We could make it better. Surely something can be done. This is the voice of judgment. I look at the situation, I see how it is according to my criteria, I make a report, I make a plan for change. If you think how busy you have been in your life, doing so many things, were they really necessary? We get older, our life energy goes down. Where did life go? We traveled around, we went to different places, talked to people, slept with people, and so on. This is movement. The movement was there and then gone. Are we just movement? The ego, it manifests as patterning of movement, isolating itself from the field of movement that it is actually an inalienable part of. And so it doesn't see, I already belong. It's fine. It's okay. Instead, the ego projects into the future to make plans of what have to be done. So essentially, the enemy, the key enemies of love are ignoring of the open ground, and consequent with that, but almost simultaneous with it, is identification as a separate ego. So if you're swimming in the sea and you're a reasonably good swimmer, if you collaborate with the water, you can swim a long distance. But if you suddenly get a moment of shock, think, oh my God, this sea is so big, I am separate from the water, then our actions become more struggling. Then swimming becomes more exhausting. In the same way, the ego is part of the water. It's like a wave from the ocean. But in the anxiety of recognizing your own real separation, you cling on to something. Just as an infant, as they gradually separate from their mother, often will hang on to some soft toy or piece of cloth as a companion to see them through this process of separation. This is standing in the place of the mother. So we do the same. We attach ourselves to people as if this one special person could somehow be everything. In English, we say things like, you mean the world to me. You are my world. This is, of course, madness, but it shows exactly the power of wanting to hang on. Save me from the isolation of myself. But no one can save us from the isolation of ourself, because the isolation of the self is not based on the loss of one special person like the mother. It's based on forgetfulness of our own infinite ground. Emptiness is our ground. It doesn't mean that we are nothing at all. Emptiness is the plenum void, the full void. So emptiness is always full. So in the Dzogchen tradition, we talk of this by saying the mind is pure from the very beginning, means it's empty of any kind of taint or substance or fixed mark. And simultaneously, it's filling with everything which occurs moment by moment. It's just this. And ceaselessly filling and filling and filling. And because filling and emptying is simultaneous and instant, it's invisible, here and gone, except it didn't come here from anywhere and it's not going anywhere. We are this instant display. We don't find any enduring aspect to our seeming individual identity. So, with these enemies of love, we have individual identity and attachment to the special one who will make me safe. So, for example, in Tantra, we have many different methods for dealing with this problem. I, this solitary person, needs someone special, someone who can make my life complete. This is the Yidam, the meditation deity towards which I offer all my devotion. Say, I need you. You should remember the Yidam first thing in the morning and last thing at night, and offer your food and drink to the Yidam. And the structure of the practice is we say, you are the wonderful one. You have every good quality. I have nothing. I am small and lost and confused. You must save me. So then we recite the mantras many times, or special prayers many times, imagining that from the deity, rays of light are coming to our forehead, our throat, and our heart, purifying all obscurations. And then at the end of this recitation, we're imagining our body is full of light, and the deity comes to the top of our head and dissolves into us, so there is only a ball of light, which then dissolves into spacious emptiness. Now, even if you love a human being very much and you have a lot of sex with them, after the sex is over, you end up stuck in yourself, in your own separate body. You had hope for a fusion, but you end up back in separation, which is what we find with all the objects of attachment in samsara. Whereas when we do the practice and we really open into this form of light, which could be a peaceful dakini, it could be padmasambhava, a heruka, however it is your own Buddha potential, which is purifying you and dissolving into you. Then you arise from this infinite openness as the deity, and everything is your mandala. Everything you see is the form of the deity. Every sound you hear is mantra. Every thought, sensation, feeling that arises is the movement of the infinite compassionate mind of the Buddha. Now you are in the field of love. Everyone you meet is already inside the Buddha mandala. That's the tantric way of opening yourself to the fact of intrinsic connectivity. By letting the deity wash yourself out of yourself, you become the spacious presence that is open to everything. And in Dzogchen, we do something very similar with this Guru Yoga, except here we relax directly into space, that our mind is inseparable from space. Everything is arising in space. So there is an infinite welcome to whatever is occurring, but we have no need of any of these thoughts or feelings or sensations. And this is the key point, and this is how you can know whether you are settled in the true openness when you do the practice. Awareness is intrinsic, it's not a construct. The ego is contingent and is always constructing itself. So when you're sitting in the meditation and you become involved with what is arising, thinking about it, reacting to it, this is a sign that you are settled inside the ego skin, the ego cocoon, which seems to separate you from what is around. So when we were looking at these four immeasurables, the fourth was equanimity, impartiality, being without bias. This is the quality we want in the practice, not perceiving some arising as friends or desirable factors and others as enemies or useless factors. We don't need to add or subtract. From the very beginning, the mind is complete, like a circle. If the circle is complete, you don't add anything or take anything away. But once you start trying to use the environment to shift your mood, just as on an outer level, you might feel a bit unhappy in yourself. So you go to the kitchen and you get some chocolate. You're using the chocolate, the object, to shift the state of the subject. And we do that with tea and coffee, with listening to music, with phoning a friend, and so on. Subject and object are like two waves in the ocean. They are always going to be an interaction. They are playing together. The problem with the ego formation is that it tries to control the patterning of the subject by manipulating the object. But there are so many objects which influence us. So there is no end to the invitation to do a bit of this and a bit of that. Now, if we're doing this all day long, it's not surprising that when the time comes for us to sit, the habit of involvement in the stream of what is arising is still very strong. So we have to relax and release ourselves out of this busy activity. The ego always needs something. Awareness never needs something. Awareness is free of need. It's like the mirror. The mirror doesn't need reflections. And it doesn't need particular kinds of reflections. It's just open. It is non-selective. It is welcoming. Whereas the ego is always selective, always exclusive, entering into judgment. So you might think, okay, James, if I follow what you are saying, it's better if I'm relaxed in awareness than very busy inside the ego. So how do I get out of the ego? Well, you're not in the ego. The ego is an illusion. The very idea that you have to get out of the bad place in order to get into the good place is the dualistic work of the ego itself. If you want to be free of the ego, don't do anything. You cannot free yourself from the ego, but the ego will bother you less and less if you don't feed it. Now, when you feel that you are the ego and the ego is hungry, you feel hungry. Time for chocolate. Who is eating the chocolate? I am eating the chocolate. But who is this one who says, I am the one who is eating the chocolate? Oh, this is empty awareness. Hey, awareness, what are you doing eating chocolate? I eat the chocolate because I enjoy it. I don't need it. Awareness also enjoys eating dry biscuits. Awareness eats everything. Mirror is open to everything. The ego says, I need chocolate. I don't want potatoes. But awareness always says, whatever comes, comes. So we are about at the limit of what language can say. You have to be kind to yourself, tender to yourself. This is not some crude activity that you mobilize by the will to power. Rather, you are settling yourself into where you are. You have been displacing yourself from where you are by imagining worlds which don't exist. Less is more. Don't try so hard. There are many Buddhist paths of effort, the things you can do with your body, your voice, your mind. But we have to remember that the basic view in Dzogchen is that from the very beginning, the whole, the complete, the integral is already present. Ignorance hasn't actually separated you from anything. What the whole encompasses everything. If the whole is ignored, something doesn't come into true existence. We have to open to the whole. Otherwise, our attention is always on maintaining the small domain we seem to inhabit. So, in the tantric practice I was describing, when you merge with the deity, light dissolves into nothingness. And in this empty nothingness, which is infinite, without any limit, everything starts to arise. But hopefully you can see it is my own fixation on the particular as being special that separates this particular from the whole. When we are sitting, we just sit. We don't have any ambition. We're not trying to achieve something. We're allowing our mind to relax. If we are here, why are we moving? We move to go from here to somewhere else, but we want to be here. Here is always the central point of the ground. The ground is here and now. This is where the whole is, where it shows itself. But if you imagine somewhere else is better, that your mind would be improved if you had a better kind of thought, then you will never see how your mind is. Because you imagine that the patterns of experience which are revealed by awareness are more important than awareness. But just look. If you look, you will see all these moments of movement, of patterning vanish. They will cheat you. They will promise you now you get what you need, and then they're gone. What we, what we need is to be where we are. And we are where we are. So maybe we don't have to do too much. So we sit and life goes on. Life is moving through the space of the mind. Each of these movements is a phenomena. These kind of phenomena are called dharmas, also in Sanskrit. The dharma dhatu is the sphere or the openness in which all dharmas are. The dharma dhatu is your own awareness. Everything is welcome, but the ego doesn't agree. The ego is the judge. Everyone is not welcome. May my friends be enlightened and my enemies go to hell. Now you get the taste of the enemies of love. May all beings be happy. Everything is the display of the unborn ground. If you look, you will see this is true. It's not a belief or a dogma. You just have to be with yourself. Sorry. So when you sit, sometimes you're depressed, sometimes you're anxious, sometimes you're bored, sometimes you're happy. Keep sitting. Then it becomes clearer. Oh, I'm not happy. I'm not depressed. There is depression. There is happiness. So earlier today, when we were looking at may all beings be happy, we were seeing that one sense of happiness is satisfaction. So this is a quality of the Dharmakaya, which is the mind, the aspect of the mind that is at home or inseparable from the Dharma Dhatu. So if we are satisfied, we don't need more. So you sit in the practice and thoughts are coming and going. They're like in a modern Japanese restaurant where the dishes are going round and round on a automated movement. You see dish after dish, but you're satisfied. Some of them, some dishes look delicious, others you don't really like. Whether they seem positive or negative, you're satisfied. This is a central point. Relax into awareness, rigpa, which is inseparable from the empty ground, and allow the free movement of experience without interfering. Of course, you have to make choices. If you go to the supermarket, there's so many things, you can't buy everything. But you have discernment. You have a sense of the time of year, the state of your body, what is an authentic hunger. We know that there are many disorders of hunger. That you, you have emotional hungers that cause you to eat what you don't need. So by releasing the tensions of body, voice, and mind, by not accumulating a charge of stress in your interactions in the day, remaining loose and pliable, just rolling with life without taking it too seriously. Then when you come to sit in the practice, you don't have unmet needs from other aspects of life which get projected onto grasping at thoughts and feelings. Like a mirror, you're open to everything. And when you get up from the meditation and you go into the field of movement, you are moving in the field of movement. You are movement in the space of the mind. You are moving in awareness. Awareness is not a possession. Awareness is the light of the field, the illumination whereby everything is available. So this allows us to gradually ease our way out of the heaviness of being this body, being this personality, being this person with our history and our likes and dislikes, until we are just a wave of energy interacting moment by moment. And when we see that everything arises from the same ground, we see there is no real basis for discrimination, for saying self and other, good and bad. And then there is no boundary to love. That is to say, we are aware of everything we encounter. We don't have a selective attention, but we can welcome our limitations as well. I give a warm welcome to my disregard for football. We are as we are, not trying to be other than how we are, but not being limited inside this formation. So this is how we can proceed day by day until one day we turn into a rainbow. So now we come to the end for today. Thank you for your attention to this strange kind of event. Thank you to our translators, Juan, Taisha, Milton, and Joe. And thank you to Pedro, who will be managing the Zoom recording of the event, so it will be available. And through the autumn, there will be some other teachings that will be available if you're interested, and the details will be on the Simply Being website. So have a good evening and pleasure being with you for some time. Bye for now.
Thank you, James. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you, James. James.
Thank you.
Bye.
James.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.